This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Chenok. I'm the president of Insight Media, as well as the executive director of the 8K Association. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to participate. Today, I'm going to be talking about 8K use cases, as well as some of the things that the 8K Association is undertaking. So let me share my screen and get started. Okay. So as I said, I'll talk about use cases, the association's view on what's happening in distribution, since this is a very distribution-focused event. And we'll talk about some of the specific activities that the 8K Association is doing in this part of the ecosystem. So I'm going to briefly run through some of these use cases. There are many of them. I just want to kind of treat this at a high level at this point. So let's start with entertainment, for example. This is what most people think about when they think about 8K, of course. It's an 8K TV running a movie or some kind of TV content. Clearly, the benefits here are going to be improved picture quality, but we have a number of challenges. And just as a preface, the benefits and challenges I'm going to talk about for some of these use cases, it very much depends on where you sit in that particular ecosystem for each of these use cases. So each of these use cases has a very long discussion associated with it. Obviously, I can't get into that in this presentation, so this is very, very high level, so please understand. So some of the challenges on the entertainment space here, we see clearly the lack of finished 8K content. A lot of content for TVs and movies is actually captured in 8K resolution. It's just not finished in 8K or distributed in 8K right now. So that's clearly a challenge. And we need cost-effective distribution methods for 8K, which has been the topic of a number of talks at this event. And we need to see lower cost TVs, of course. But you know, history has told us that the same challenges were presented for the 4K resolution upgrade 6-7 years ago, and those challenges have been met for the most part, certainly on the TV space and the content space. Distribution, yes and no. So moving on, medical. Did you know that there are actually 8K endoscopes out there today? That's true. So there is a benefit for surgery in that regard, having better imagery. You can also think about education that needs to go on in medical schools and training facilities. Having those higher resolution images and more color accurate images is a clear benefit. And for telemedicine as well. Certainly the pandemic has told us that telemedicine is an important ingredient in delivering healthcare, and having higher resolution cameras and displays can make a difference, especially if they're color accurate. But we need more awareness of these capabilities, and cost of all these solutions, of course, is going to be an issue as well. Sports, we've already seen a number of trials in sporting events, particularly high-profile events like World Cup and the Olympics. And I think this is going to continue. Hopefully the Olympics will take place this summer in Japan, and certainly the Beijing 22 Olympics and the World Cup are going to be major events, which I'm pretty sure will profile 8K. So what are the benefits here? Well, you can have 8K cameras that can capture the entire field for one, and that enables a number of benefits. That includes very high zoom capabilities while maintaining high resolution. You can also create software-defined cutouts, 2K or 4K resolution cutouts that can actually track a player or a ball and go direct to air. And the benefit of that now is you can potentially eliminate multiple camera positions. So there are some very compelling benefits in the broadcast space here, but there are also some significant challenges. Clearly those benefits work if for 2K or 4K distribution, but we're going to have to figure out workflows and costs and distribution challenges if we want to deliver an 8K finished product to the consumer, however. Security. We know security cameras are everywhere in private installations, in government and military, in public spaces for sure. Typically, these have been low resolution or medium resolution, low frame rate, but security concerns are not going away, and having that higher resolution capability that again has the kind of benefits that we saw in broadcast, a higher zoom, higher fidelity, and even HDR content is going to be more and more important, I think, going forward. The cost of the cameras and the monitors is going to be one of the many challenges here. Museums is an interesting application as well. We've seen some demonstrations where you can capture the image of fine art or artifacts or other precious objects that you don't necessarily want to have in public display, either for security reasons or because they're very fragile and it should not be handled. So you can now capture very high fidelity images or models of these and present them to the public on an 8K display. Clearly capturing those images, the displays, awareness, interactivity is an interesting challenge here now, because you're going to be actually close to the monitor and you may want to manipulate this artifact or object. And then the local playback and distribution is also one of the challenges, which is a challenge across many of these applications. An also very interesting application are these emerging large, I'm just calling them large digital canvases. You've seen these everywhere in shopping malls, and stadiums, and planetariums, theme parks, arenas, theaters, even location-based entertainment. Many of these are LED-based, but many of them are also projector-based, so multiple projection applications that create canvases that can be, 100 megapixels, 200 megapixels, 500 megapixels. Here's the example I'm showing here is a 24K 3D screen on the ceiling of this shopping center. These very large canvases need content, and scaling all that content can be done, but clearly having higher resolution capture, 8K or higher resolution capture, will create a better image. So clearly the cost of these installations and the cost of the capture and playback is going to be one of the many challenges here. Inspections is also an interesting area that's been highlighted by Sharp and others. So think about roads, pipes, bridges, buildings, any place that's hard to access, but inspections are vital for maintaining that infrastructure. A lot of this is going to be drone-based applications. We have seen the ability to put small 8K cameras on drones and support this application, but I think the communication between the drone and the receiver is going to be one of the challenges, and cost, of course, it's also an issue. Visualization and simulation is also an interesting market. This goes on in many industries. I've highlighted military, transportation, industrial, and research labs here. So anywhere from aircraft flight simulations to military simulations to truck simulators, ship simulators, and in the research world, biomedical or physics-based simulations and nuclear simulations all require very high fidelity models in this case, not camera captured images. So making sure that those models are high fidelity and now have the display capabilities, clearly a benefit for many of these simulations. Corporate is a well-established professional AV market. We're seeing more and more of these start to move to larger canvases, which I already covered. But you're seeing these in boardrooms as well, and lobbies and VIP lounges. And this image here kind of shows what these kind of displays are all about now. It's creating a look, a brand, And the higher fidelity of these things creates a positive impact for the folks who are viewing these things. And so we're clearly seeing a trend in this area. But again, content, cost, local distribution factors are challenges. Let's not also forget about user-generated content. There are smartphones out there that can capture 8K video content and high-resolution stills, as well as a number of, let's call them prosumer-grade cameras. These are in the $4,000 or $5,000 kind of price range that can be used by professionals, but also by high-end consumer enthusiasts. And these can be great for playing back on your 8K TV that you have at home. So I think we're going to see more and more of this happening in the future as these capabilities in consumer devices become more accessible. And let's not forget about gaming. Clearly, PS5 and Xbox 10 are 8K capable. Both of those are going to be enabled with 8K capabilities in 2021, is my understanding. But these are going to be challenged to create high fidelity images with all the features turned on at 8K. So I'm saying slow frame rate applications are a better fit for 8K gaming in general. And that also applies to PC gaming, I think, as well. The graphics cards are out there to support it right now, but it takes a lot of processing power to have all these features on at the same time with the 8K output. That, of course, will evolve over time. So switching gears, let's talk now a little bit about our view in the 8K Association about what's happening in the distribution part of the ecosystem. I realize there have been a number of talks on this already, and will be more as part of this event, but this is just our view at this stage. So on satellite and over-the-air distribution, we see satellite distribution as frankly challenging right now. The 80+ megabits distribution that NHK is doing is not a viable long-term solution. And we're actually seeing a decline in the conventional satellite distribution, certainly here in the US anyway. DirecTV, which is part of AT&T now, has said that they will not be deploying any more satellites to support their TV services. But the flip side of that is that we're starting to see a lot of smaller mini sats being deployed to support internet services like Starlink from Elon Musk, and there are other services out there. That could change the equation here. It's still early, so we don't really know the impact of this yet for 8K. And I think it's kind of a similar situation in over-the-air. ATSC 3.0 and DBD both need work to support 8K in a commercial way. But we're also seeing broadcasters starting to embrace more internet delivery and hybrid delivery, so a combination of over-the-air plus IP delivery. So I think there's some opportunity there. But unless we see some changes in the satellite and over-the-air part of this distribution, we still see those as challenged, and internet delivery being a more likely scenario for near-term 8K streaming services. 5G is often touted as the savior for 8K, or one of the big opportunities to deliver 8K anyway. And that's partly true and partly not true. I think there's a lot of hype around 5G, but all of that hype really talks about the millimeter wave capability, where the very high data rates are a reality. But the fact that those are line of sight transmission capabilities for the most part, and very short distance, means that they may be great for production capabilities, for backhaul, for private campuses and commercial applications and dense urban environments. But the main consumer applications are going to be at much lower frequencies in the lower bands, the sub-6 bands, where the data rates will not be as high. And there many of the benefits go to the carriers and less so to the consumers. And of course, service now for 5G, for any cellular service distribution, is going to be based on, network congestion at the time. So I think the realities of 5G for the consumer are a little unclear at this point for 8K. I think it does have benefits in the commercial space, particularly for millimeter wave, but it's still early days for both of these applications right now. Cable distribution we see is a little bit better opportunity here. The US is currently going through a 10 gigabit per second fiber topology upgrade. So that's 10 times more than the current topology offers. So that will also include more reliability, better security, lower latency. And as I mentioned with 5G, your actual data rates in the home will vary. Kind of based on how many homes are in that local network, type of topology that you have, the copper or fiber, and the number of people who are actually streaming content or downloading files at any one time. But we do see the combination of this 10G network along with Wi-Fi 6. And in particular, the emerging Wi-Fi 6E bands. These are the 6 gigahertz bands that have now been opened up in the US and many countries, which will provide even higher bandwidth, which actually should be quite good for 8K distribution and support. So this combination we see is probably better positioned right now for delivering 8K streaming services to start. In the codec space, we're actually also in a unique time here. Traditionally, we've seen kind of one codec being the main codec that served the video market. Now we're seeing many codecs serving the video market. So we see in the near term kind of a smart or an AI-assisted streaming option being an interesting approach for starting an 8K delivery service, and I'll talk more about in the next slide. But there are also several other codecs in development, in particular LCEVC, HEVC, which is already there, AV1, which is here, and AVS3, a China-based codec, which can serve the 8K market today as well. Longer term, there are multiple other codecs that are in development, which promise to increase the data rates and improve efficiency, albeit at the compromise of higher computing power. But all of these things are helping evolve the codec space and will help the distribution of 8K. So I mentioned smart streaming. What do we mean by smart streaming? Well, we define this as starting with an 8K master, so you have to encourage people to create that finished 8K product first of all. But now you use AI to smartly downscale that to 4K using that downscaling process and the AI to create some metadata. So now you have a 4K distribution stream plus metadata that can be streamed out to consumers or broadcast out to consumers using the codecs that are available today. If you have a 4K TV, it ignores the metadata. You've got a nice clean 4K signal. If you have an 8K TV, it can use this metadata to now upscale it back to the 8K image that it started with. So providing a very nice, potentially cost-effective and high-quality 8K streaming model. So a number of companies have demonstrated this kind of capability already, such as Samsung, Sharp, Fujitsu, and Harmonic. So this could be a very interesting option for starting an 8K streaming service. So let me shift gears now a little bit and tell you a little bit more about specifically what the 8K Association is doing in the distribution part of the ecosystem. So let's start with our mission, first of all. It's to educate both consumers and professionals about 8K and to encourage the expansion of this 8K ecosystem in a number of different areas. We also have a focus on consumers where we have an AK certification program for TVs to help aid them in choosing a high quality TV. We want to embrace all aspects of AK. I just went through all those use cases, so all of those are interesting to us potentially. Realistically, we've been focused on the entertainment space to start, and we want to promote AK products and product advancements and content distribution, and we're also sourcing content, AK content, for the use by our members and potentially by other organizations as well. So here's just an organizational chart. We've got 5 work groups that are working on different parts of this ecosystem. I'm going to focus specifically on this content and distribution aspect, that work group. So we've got four kind of major projects ongoing here. The first is to document what is going on in the encoder and decoder evaluations, encoder and decoder space, specifically for 8K applications. Clearly, there's a lot of activity going on with different codecs and newer codecs to develop, to showcase what those codecs and encoders can do. But a lot of that work is focused on 1080p or 4K content. We want to document what's happening specifically with 8K content, which is less readily accessible. So part of this project is to aggregate what we know about what's going on out there and to start to communicate what's going on out there, because it's in multiple places and not well documented at this point. So this is a documentation task to start. Once we kind of understand what's going on in the encoding space, then we can start to understand how we can help support it a little bit better. And that includes both commercial encoding companies as well as standards development organizations who may need 8K content, for example, which we may be able to try and support. And as these evaluations are completed, we want to publicize this to the broader 8K ecosystem market, again, to help to democratize what's going on out there and to help show that there are solutions and potentially cost-effective solutions that can start to establish 8K distribution services. We mentioned AI and machine learning and neural network activities, but there is a lot going on in this space out here as well. And just in this coding and encoding space here, we're really at the very early stages here. So there's a huge opportunity here right now that we see going forward to support all kinds of streaming applications, not just 8K. So we've divided our activities here into 3 kind of segments. One is codec-based AI or machine learning or neural network activities, and these are really focused more on the standards development organizations you see listed here. The second are kind of codec agnostic activities. So think of these as pre and post-processing activities. The LC-EVC standard, as well as the ScaleNet activities from Samsung, I think qualify as codec agnostic. There are things like denoising and edge processing, object processing. We've seen that uses where machine learning can be used for convex hull optimization. There's content aware encoding. So there's a number of these kind of activities out there that, again, we want to document some of these at first, and so we can start to aggregate them and then promote them to help the ecosystem move forward. And then the third area specifically are encoder-focused activities, so optimization of hardware and software. And then the last area is this smart streaming application. I mentioned there are a number of companies that are doing this, so we want to start basically by documenting what these companies are doing, and then we'll figure out what the next step is for us to help democratize that or move that ball forward. So I will stop there. Thank you for your kind attention. If you have any questions about the 8K ecosystem or the 8K Association in particular, please feel free to reach out to me directly at the contact information there below. Thank you very much.